We are live here on the Dr. Boz Show. It is Tuesday night, and I am just a couple minutes behind schedule, but I have a really great program tonight. I also was at the dentist, and so I wasn't sure if my face would be unnumb by now, but it looks like I'm almost symmetrical again. So thanks for joining me live tonight. I'm going to start with a tradition here on the Dr. Boz Show, which is checking my numbers. I have done a pretty good job of fasting this week, and that means we're at about, it was early Sunday. Oh no, I had a bite to eat on Sunday night. So we're only at about 48 hours fasting. So, you win some, you lose some. So I'll check my numbers here and give you that report. And meanwhile, we are having a couple of announcements that have happened in the past week. If you did not get our email last Friday, I'm going to give you a little recap of what it was. Our email was sharing how we've had two major fans that ended up in the centerfold of Women's World this past week. And as a result of that, they are, their stories have been really, really fun to not only tell people about, but improve. Let me show you. I've got a ketones of 2.0 and glucose of 75. I'll tell you, when I was at the dentist today, so I did check numbers throughout the day, and sometimes I don't do as good a job at that as others. But this morning I did a workout. And I had been in the sauna yesterday, so I was really hoping for good numbers, like, okay, I'm pushing my metabolism and doing it while fasting. And I think my numbers were somewhere in the 60s or 70s when I got up this morning. And ketones were pretty good when I woke up, like 1.5, 1.5. And then by the end of the workout, we're down to 0.8. And then I felt pretty good throughout the day, but I could feel the stress of fasting. And I knew my blood sugar was getting a little low. I get in the dentist chair and I get back from there. My ketones are like 0.4. That was only like an hour ago. And I definitely said, okay, the stress of sitting in that chair, drilling on a tooth that it cracked it's just been such a perfect score from the dentist for so long that I'm pretty sure it's grinding my teeth at night that did this. So I have nobody to blame but myself. All right, so we're going to get started because I have a great lesson for you tonight. And I just really want to say thank you to those of you that take the time to put in your comments of these lessons that we do on a live. You might know this, you might not know this, but we really gauge how well you like these topics by the lives and whether or not we'll turn them into real, the short videos. So last week when we talked about hair loss and hair follicles, we've had a few people ask about that in the past, and I thought we'd answered the question very thoroughly, but apparently I was wrong because there were tons of you that said, oh, this is great, this is new information. And although I probably did a better job in that live of connecting the dots, it was because of your comments that we said, oh, we should probably put that into a video out there. The other thing that I just want to give a little praise about is, as you know, I talk a lot about community in this space of how do you change a habit and stay in that habit when, we grew up with folks not needing not hearing about the low carbohydrates or limiting carbohydrates or time restricted eating or even fasting. I really heard very little about in my years of formation. And as you get to the place where you're an adult saying, no, I need to practice this, where's the other people that do it? And it really can be lonely. So I practice that here in my community. I have moved to Tampa a couple years ago, and so I rent the party room at the bowling alley across the parking lot at the Pin Chasers here in Tampa. And every Tuesday morning, and at first it was a half dozen people that would show up, and maybe then a dozen. And I do a lot of teaching in the workbook, the KetoCONTINUUM workbook, that says here's the rules on how to follow how to lead a group, because it shouldn't be a lot of of work for the person who's hosting it, but there are some rules to not let your support groups run away. So we had a really full house this morning. Like probably 40 people came to our support group. Again, it's at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's in like the middle of Tampa. So if you're not in Tampa proper, it's a good 1 or 2 hour commute for many of these folks to come. And we really do focus on the folks who've been coming. I want to take their histories. I want to be in community with them. I want them to hear my struggles, and then I answer their struggles. And it's only an hour and 15 minutes every week. It's free, just like your support groups should be free. But if you're ever looking for an example of how to run a support group, first of all, use the workbook. That's where all the cheat sheets are that I use to create my support group. And if you happen to be in Tampa, please do not fly to Tampa just to visit the support group. You'll be disappointed because you'll be a newbie, which means you don't get a lot of the attention. The attention is when you've been coming and you watch what the other people are asking, you can't believe how much you learn. And I think one man this morning was really disappointed because he came and I don't know if he thought he was going to get a consult or what, but it's not a medical consult. It is a support group, which means I'm going to share my struggles. I will answer questions, but especially to those people who've been coming, who've really put energy into learning about the ketogenic diet, reading the books, showing up to group and being part of our community. Anyway, I just wanted to say, never seen so many folks in our support group as we had this morning. And that we've had a few people write in saying, how do you do support groups? And so I just want to make sure you know that's what I'm talking about every week when I say, and in my support group, in my pin chasers across the hall. But every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock from 8 to 9:15. And we have some of the funnest folks that have shown up in support of our community here in Tampa. Because doing keto is a little rough. And we're going to talk about that now. I am just want to say some praise here for all the folks that have checked in. Karen Lee from Canada, one of my favorites. And we have several folks, David Barry, back again. And several of our coaches, Donna's here. Anyway, so thanks for checking in. I do see your names there. I do want to hop over to our lesson, though, because I think it's going to not only give you guys a bit of information about... I just saw somebody in the text saying, is that really her in the thumbnail? I'm like, yes, that's really me. So we're going to start by telling you a story. I get this equation a lot that says, hey, doc, what do you use on your skin? And although I do have a special oil that I give to I give it as a gift because I've been making it for years. But it's not tallow. It is, but that's all I put on my skin. And they say, wow, how did you do that? And I'm going to give you a little trip through memory lane here on what it looks like to be me since, not here, that's not the one I wanted. Since I think I started in 2014 when I'm on this slide deck. So here is 2013. Yeah, here we go. So here's 2013. You'll see the one where I'm in the red sweater. And this was actually before a major stress in my life started to happen. And it was, just even looking at the picture brings back a memory that's hard for me to process, that I was actually running for United States Senate during that picture right there. And the picture on the other side is at the end of that campaign, where I did not become senator, but I did have plenty of stress that hit that year and the following years. As you look at what happens after that stress, I put on a ton of weight. I did what many people in their 40s do, which is, I'll eat just like I did before, and then if there's stress, I'm going to eat a little more. I don't know if you can see this one of me in Mount Rushmore here, but those boys now, the youngest one is 17, and the one in the red shirt is now 19. This is my sister over here and her daughter, and she's now a junior in high school, going to be a junior in high school. Again, you can see that I've put on weight there. I'm definitely the heaviest I'd been outside of pregnancy. As the stress continued, I'm doing my best to try and lose weight. I've got there's a CrossFit board in the back, and those are my kids doing CrossFit with me then. But it's not working. It's not working at all. This is me at a wrestling tournament, and I've got, baggy clothes on for a reason. You can see in this picture here under the 2015 that my face is really full. It's not because I'm swollen. That's because I'm overweight, and I was trying my best to lose this weight. In 2015 and 2016 is when life changed. This is when the weight was the highest, actually. And it's also when the story of what is written in the book, Any Way You Can, it's when the story began. That mom had come home and she was, that's her picture from before chemotherapy, and she needed help. So when I said I did it with her, I was not doing great at that time either. This is the picture where I'm the heaviest, and I'm trying. I mean, you can see the snow on the background there. It's in the winter of that 2015-16, and I want to lose weight. I give people advice on this all the time. I can't believe it's so hard for me after that. It was a major stress from 2013 and 14, and now into 15 was trying to find my way out of that. But it really just knocked my socks off. And when people say, wow, it looks like you're reversing age as you have been keto. Well, there's more to it than just the weight loss. And so I'm just going to try to keep up with your comments here. Yes, I did run for the United States Senate, not just the state Senate, the United States Senate. Yeah, it was a big ordeal. 2018 is when we'd been doing keto now for a couple years. It's when the book came out. This is Grandma Rose after she had lost all of her weight, and she had a colostomy bag there, but had lived through that mess, and really had a wonderful story that was unfolding. That one where I'm in the red hat, I think, is one of my first YouTube videos. So you can see that even when you look at my face here on live television from 2018, that looks a lot more similar than what it did. Even though the weeks before that, or the years before that, somebody wrote in, "What was your heaviest?" Yeah, I don't like to step on the scale when it's that heavy, but it's at least 40 pounds from where I am now. So, 170, in the 170s, I bet. So as KetoCONTINUUM was being, or Any Way You Can was being, it was taking off. People were actually seeing it. And again, I wrote that book hoping like 12 family members would write it. I lost a bet to my husband. But what had happened was a whole bunch of patients wanted to come figure out how to do this too. And it's not an accident that I started by talking about the support group that we have in our community, because this is a long journey. Do I think that all of these pictures, I can tell you on the days where I'm feeling better, when I'm not. I want you to look at a couple things here. Here's 2019. And if you look carefully at my eyes, there's still kind of a darkness in my skin that's, I don't want to call it ashen, but it wasn't as bright as it has been as it has been recently. So I'll talk a little bit more of that when we get to the science. Here's a picture of my sister and I golfing in 2019, but I'm back down to what I would consider the pre-stress weight. I think every woman says another 10 pounds is where it's perfect. But even with that, I had felt good, and we were back, obviously out in the sun there. But we are about 3 years apart, but I think it was one of those moments where somebody said, it's a good friend of ours, said, well, she's the older sister, right? And pointed to my sister. Now, I'm really bossy. So I'm like, well, but my sister's pretty bossy too. So I guess when you're around the two of us, you probably couldn't tell the difference. But I was like, ha! They said I looked younger than my little sister. But I think we kind of look the same. So, and we're only 3 years apart. So this was just another picture, 2019, when my youngest son and I went to Puerto Rico, and we gave a lecture together. Yep, that's before his growth spurt. Isn't he adorable? But it had a timestamp on it, so I thought I'd just make sure. I'm not kind of pulling these pictures out of nowhere. But you can start to see in 2019, at the end of that year, that my skin was getting a lot brighter, and there were other things happening on the inside that we're going to talk about tonight. So here is 2021, and again, I've got a much I mean, I suppose you can doctor up any picture, but no, I don't have a plastic surgeon, and no, haven't had liposuction or anything like that. This is what your body does when you're keto. So I'm going to go through and talk about some of the other things that are really happening. So these are just more pictures of how my face and specifically my skin has changed. So in the year of 2023, here's 2015 to 2023 in the summary. Even though every woman can find a few circles under their eyes, I notice a definite improvement in my skin, but also in the way my face looks. So we're going to talk about those 5 things that I look at whenever I see a patient, when I look at myself in pictures, and how much you can learn from it as well. So let's start by covering the science about what's happening during a ketogenic diet. I have some notes here. I just want to make sure I'm covering here. So let me pull those up and make sure they're here. So yeah, here is a picture in 2019 where my body mass index is too high. Yes, I have put on some of that weight. I don't think I'm at my peak heaviest from all that stress then, but I'm heavy. There's plenty of, and I will have patients, gosh, I can remember the patients who said this, that they would say, "Hey doc, I don't want to lose weight. I'll get wrinkles." And I'm here to show you as closely as I can get to this image that the wrinkles are nothing compared to the dinginess that happens when people are too heavy. That look in their skin, but also that fullness in their face they think looks healthy. It's not the kind of health you want. Remove the weight. There are so many other things associated to it. So I got that way because I was over consuming carbs after giving birth to 3 kids and having been overweight, not a lot, but enough to have insulin resistance. I didn't know it. And when I put on that extra pounds due to all the life choices and stress that were going on, my insulin said, "Hey, we know exactly what to do with that fat. We've got a place for it." And it filled every one of my fat cells to the brim, while doing a few other things that insulin also does. I was definitely eating more than I should. I don't know if you can see this image here is called acanthosis nigricans. It is a process where the skin cells, that's not dirt on someone's neck. That is skin cells that are not, they're not turning over adequately. In fact, they turn over in a way that leaves them dark and brown. And this is a white person. This is a butt white person like me. And that dirtiness, that brownness is a process of a high insulin state and the issue that happens at the depth of their skin when those cells are turning over. You can scrub this, but it doesn't come off. It's like trying to scrub off a suntan. That's not going to come off. This is part of how all the, thousands of layers of skin cells between the dead ones at the top, the ones on our skin, and the live ones making a dividing cell at the bottom are making. You have to reorganize how you're making the skin in order to make this go away. And the number one hormone that's doing it is insulin. I will just say my tooth is really sore. If I start talking sideways or get limp, you'll know why. Be sure if you have questions, my team is looking for questions that relate to this. So if you've got a question, type it in and they'll put it in the docket to do at the end of the show. All right, let's keep going here because acanthosis nigricans is an extreme issue with skin, but that dinginess around my eyes, that the darkness that would be under my armpits or in any folds of my skin, this is the back of somebody's neck or the area, the fold under their neck. That is just really common for us to look at when we're doing a physical exam, that it's there and it's from high insulin. Now this is a dark photo, but I'm trying to be very transparent here that I didn't like pictures then. It was a very difficult season for me, but you can see that I've got some puffiness around my eyes. I've got a really full skin, really full face, but I also have, it's dingy. It's a skin brightness that you cannot exfoliate away. You cannot put, my oil that I love to give out to my friends. That's not going to fix it. You gotta start at the skin cells at the bottom. Some of the other things that were happening during that, when that was really dark, is how do you reverse that? Well, I've shown this picture many times where underneath our fat is this, the physical, the musculature that's in there. And when, the fat-built hormones, when they are trying to get to different cells in your body, well, they are under the dictatorship of insulin. I went through this a little bit last week. Here's your fat-based hormones: vitamin D, estradiol, estrone, progesterone, aldosterone, testosterone. And these hormones all begin as cholesterol. When cholesterol then breaks off to become these hormones, that's where they are present. And just like any other fat-based molecule, this molecule will end up in the storage cells of our body instead of in our cells. Now, I know for sure that my vitamin D during that dingy time of my life was really low. Like, I like my vitamin D to be, well, at least above 50, but well into the 80s, 90s, 100. I don't do anything when it's under 150. I just keep doing what I'm doing. But when I look at that skin, I know that was when my vitamin D was really low, like in the 20s, and well, I simply didn't care. I was really dealing with enough other things. But I want to show you, here are 3 pictures of fat cells. Notice that you've got that little angry guy down at the bottom. That's our Mr. Insulin that is inflamed and high. Insulin is a healthy thing that we need, but when it's been high for too long, that insulin pushes these hormones out of circulation. So the structure that you see there with the vitamin D, the big oval circle, and then that little circle with a 25. So vitamin D needs a carrying agent. It carries it from different places in the body. And I just want you to watch what happens in here. As the vitamin D comes along and high insulin is present, it puts that vitamin D into the fat cells. The carrying agent says, no, you can't go to the other cells and be useful. You need to go into storage, and that is and the person dictating that is your insulin. So without vitamin D in circulation and without estrogen in circulation, you're going to find yourself stuck. Here's one of my favorite cells that talks about inside a mitochondria, inside a cell, that vitamin D comes in, it goes off that carrier, goes into the mitochondria, it gets switched, it gets turned on, if you would, activated, and then it becomes a different version of vitamin D, and now it can fit into the nucleus. Watch what happens next. The vitamin D now slips into the nucleus of the cell, and the DNA that's found inside your nucleus will trigger production of proteins. So if you've ever heard me or anybody else teaching about vitamin D, and we say, yes, it's a hormone, and we say, yes, it's a vitamin, but one of the key components that it just seems to have like panacea, like this will fix everything. And it's because that vitamin D goes into a cell, and once that vitamin D is activated and then ends up in your nucleus, it's going to trigger different proteins to come out of your skin cells. It's going to trigger different proteins to come out of your heart cells, your brain cells, your eye cells, your ovary cells. Vitamin D speaks differently to each of your cells, and you can do that. You can see it by the proteins you're measuring that become dismal when the vitamin D isn't in circulation, when it can't get to the cell, when it's stuck in your fat cells. And one of the places where you say, yes, vitamin D is really important for good skin, and so people take vitamin D, but if their insulin is so high, if they're overweight, they're having a tough time ever getting it to the cell, getting it to the places where you need it. So let's go back over here to the slides and keep going, because it's just a gorgeous slide, I think. Not that one, sorry. Here we go. All right, so vitamin D has that protein production, and that's why you can find that most cells have different responses. The other thing that happens, though, is when you are looking at estrogen and testosterone in males and females, we both have both of them. That estradiol is the predominant hormone for females, even though, like, if you were to have a measuring cup or measuring units, there's still way more testosterone in a woman than estradiol. But when you're in a high insulin state, you're going to have a difficult time activating one of the enzymes that keeps you in the balanced side of life. So I say this because the next thing that people usually point out, we've done a couple of the things. So number one sign that I was, let's make sure you're following along with what I'm trying to say here. Number one sign of my face from 13 to 2015, maybe it was 2014, was that, my BMI, I was definitely much more overweight. And that was a consequence of high insulin. Number two was puffy skin. Oh, I didn't do that. I think that slide's coming up. I did dark skin in a second. The hormones that also impact how youthful your skin looks and how healthy somebody looks. It should be a certain level in a woman. The estradiol should be a certain level in a woman and a certain level of testosterone in a man. When you get high insulin, you wreck that. Your estrogen levels go up in a man and your testosterone levels go up in a woman. And if you are, I'm 51, I will be 52 at the end of this year. And I haven't gone through menopause, but I have taken care of women for 25 years now that are going through menopause. And if you look at the rapid rate that women do go through menopause earlier, it is when the testosterone rises before you're 50, before you're in menopause. One way to trigger menopause is to take away the estrogen, and it's the ratio of testosterone to estrogen that puts them into menopause. So this fat-based hormone that comes from cholesterol that gets tucked away in your fat cells if you have too high of insulin, I believe if I wouldn't have headed into this chronic ketogenic state, I'd have probably gone through menopause by now. I know that I feel great, and that in part it's because yes, menopause will come, and I'll get through it when I get there. But for now, it's not here, and I think that's in part because of that. The insulin has been low, and my estrogen and testosterone and progesterone. I do not supplement them. I do not take them. It doesn't say I'll never take them, but I don't have any symptoms to do that. I feel great. So in that high insulin state, that's what I wanted to make sure to talk about here. Is there is a shift on the ratio of estrogen to testosterone. So men have struggles with this, and so do women. And those hormones really do affect how you look. Oh, here's the thing I wanted. So the third thing was that puffiness that looks like in your skin. And today in our support group at the Pin Chasers, we talked about blood pressure a lot. Had a really good question about blood pressure and really dove into one of my favorite people who's really gone through some struggles, and I want him to know the answers to the questions he has. So we spent time on, what are some ways that you can predict whether or not your blood pressure is in the right spot. And he's been really good keto for a while, had great blood pressure, and then he kind of wasn't great keto, and now he's got some setbacks. And he said, so I upped my fat, and he's got a few cardiology teams watching him now, and I upped my fat, and his blood pressure came down. And he went into probably what I would be a not perfect keto, but he's doing good, but he wasn't doing great. And he's been great for a few weeks, and said, now why did my blood pressure go down? And it's the same reason that my face, I had about 10 more pictures in there, and I might have taken out the one that was just swollen, always swollen. And it's because of what's going on in this slide that I'm going to go to. When you look at that state of high insulin, that insulin is high, that prediabetes, insulin resistance, all the stuff we've been talking about so far tonight, that process of high insulin and eating carbohydrates pulls a lot more fluid out of the body's circulation and puts it in the tissue. What it does at that stage is, let me just show you this. Here in this video, in this slide, right there, this is a slide that I've shown several times. It's where the gray and the phase 1 up there, that's supposed to be where the food goes through the lumen of your body, or of your bowel. So as you swallow food, it goes, in through your mouth, out through your bum, and as that whole process from the stomach through the small intestines and all the way through the large intestines, there's a lining of a mucus layer and these cells that should fit tightly together. Now, if this slide works right, it should show you that one of the dangers of having these cells separate is that you start to lose particles of solutes, essentially, so tiny minerals. And in the case of dingy looking skin, zinc is one of them. And people say, but doc, I take a lot of zinc. I'm like, yeah, but taking a lot of zinc isn't where you're going to fix this problem. Taking a lot of zinc will allow more zinc to go in and out of this leaking. And as much as I don't like the word leaky gut, this permeability for your gut is much greater. So they take and replace these minerals when they just have a whole tunnel from top to bottom that's leaking out and not keeping these micronutrients such as salts where they're supposed to. I march all the way through this, and there's a couple other lectures I've done showing that not only do you get to a pretty nasty looking gut system, but when you have a complete ulcer, boy, those are some of the saddest stories I have in medicine. So in the case of, there was one more slide that I was going to put in there, but I see that it did not make the deck, and if I was on my iPad, I would be able to do this, but I can't. And that was looking at the edema present when I was swollen. That swelling inside your body, we demonstrated this morning in our support group when the guy was talking about his blood pressure went down when he went in a ketogenic state. Not only did his blood sugars went down, which means his insulin went down, but his ketones were more present, and that resulted in this lowered blood pressure. He was like, well, why did that happen? So I put my leg up on the table and I say, do you remember this shin print that I've taught you about? And if you Google Dr. Boz thumb, as in your thumb, shin print, like you're pushing, if this was my shin, you're pushing on your thumb. There's a couple of videos out there that you can look at that. So I demonstrated that and said, when you look at the mismanagement of fluid in our bodies, not only does it separate your skin cells as they divide and they get this gray looking thing, and if you leave it going on for too long, it's called acanthosis nigricans, but that happens everywhere in your body. It's in your gut, in the place where those salt products were coming in and out of the body. It's in your overall, I have swollen ankles today, or I have puffy face. That was the point that I was saying. When I put on the weight, not only did I have fat more on my face, but it would be such a fluctuation of swelling in my face. And that's because it was happening everywhere in my body. That when people put on weight and there's insulin resistance, when people put on weight, especially everybody in America, I can hardly find an exception. That weight process stretches the space between cells that is supposed to be nothing, zero. But then the swollen cells don't fit together well, and now there's fluid in between where those cells are supposed to be. When I push on your thumb, when I push my thumb onto your shin, and I can leave a thumbprint, fat does not leave a dimple, but water in between cells does. Extracellular fluid does, and that's also called interstitial fluid. And when this gentleman who was at the support group said, yeah, why did my blood pressure get so well controlled when I upped my fat, and he was a little more keto. He was kind of keto, and then he just took it to the next notch, and his blood pressure went down. And I said, it's the same reason that there's no longer swelling in my face. Now, if I screw up and I go on a cruise, which is not, yes, it might be called a keto cruise, but I had plenty of delights on my cruise. It didn't take long for that swelling to come back in my feet. When I had so much weight that there's swelling in my face. You have swelling in your toes, and swelling in your ankles, and swelling up to the level of your knees, and swelling in your, up to your legs. But when it's all the way up to your eyeballs, that's a lot of swelling. But really, it's actually the movement of fluid interstitially that I'm making fun of. And the reason why that's so important in the health of looking at somebody it doesn't belong there. When we're trying to control blood pressure, we use medications. You should control blood pressure. That's very important for this gentleman. He needs to control that. But man, oh man, when he gave up those carbohydrates and the sugar went down, which means the insulin went down, he no longer had as much fluid in his circulation. And it only took a few days for him to pull more fluid out of that interstitial space. And now his blood pressure was normal. What he thought was white coat hypertension. He would go into the doctor and have his blood pressure high. Well, by golly, that went away when he was no longer swollen. So let me make sure I went through the 5 things I wanted to point out. Number 1, what can I see in my face that was a sign of insulin resistance is they're overweight. Number 2 was that it's a puffy face. There's puffiness around the eyes is one layer of swelling, but also that dinginess that's to the skin is the next layer. The dinginess is from high insulin, which means your vitamin D is going to be a little lower. The testosterone and estradiol are going to be a little lower. And then the hormones that also are supposed to be estrogen and testosterone at certain levels, well, those change how your skin looks as well. That I know that life does change after you go through menopause, but I'm not there yet. All right, so we're going to go to your questions here. I have a couple of shout outs that we have a contest that we are going to talk about that's going to come out in your email. So if you have not signed up for our emails, here is our page. And again, we've got a brand new design here. We are really thankful for how the speed of our website is doing much better. Right now, you have to scroll to the bottom to be added to our newsletter. We are trying to fix that, but for now, scroll to the bottom and subscribe, join our tribe, enter your email address here, and you'll be able to get our emails. There's lots of little things that are coming out in the next few months that you're definitely going to be one of the first ones to get. Only the first few are going to get the reduced options for something we hope you can see the value in. I think it's pretty exciting. We've been testing it out at the Pin Chasers, and they've gotten a little sneak peek at it. But we're really excited about how well the website's working and how well some little fun things that we're doing that will be, I hope, appreciated by those who are watching. Let's get over to your questions and see if we can take care of this. Again, I think the gentleman who came today, who was, I think, disappointed that he didn't get that consult, you should put your questions in here. This is where I answer questions. Again, I'm not substituting for your doctor. I am using this as a platform to educate people, and you should talk to this about your doctor. But I have lots of doctors that tune in to say, how does she explain that? How would I do that? So here's some questions. Let's start with the one from Lorraine. It says, Dr. Boz, so many people say they feel great after a month. In general, how long does it take for the achy knees and tiredness to go away? I'm 2 months in and waiting for the magic to happen. Well, Lorraine, don't give up. For starters, what they're looking for, what happens when joints are one of the drivers to stay keto. First of all, you're doing the right thing. There is no anti-inflammatory that's going to do as much as a persistent ketogenic state. The timer has a dependency. That tooth feels a lot better when I put some moisture in my mouth. So that timer, I thought I had a copy of my workbook. I don't see it here. Anyway, I was going to show you that keto continuum, which truly is, it's not something everybody needs to move all the way. It's a continuum that some people get really good benefits at the early part. They never need to advance to the high levels. In the book Keto Continuum, I tell you about a gentleman named David, a real person who came to the support group when I lived in Sioux Falls. And well, he had to go all the way to the end. He needed all 12 steps of that keto continuum to get his body to reverse. But if you're saying, I'm doing okay where I'm at, but I want the part that everybody brags about, it means you've still got a lot of swelling in your body, that you should be checking numbers, that you're not on the ketogenic diet if you don't know that you're producing ketones. If it means you're peeing on a stick, great. But if you're at a month plus and you're kind of stalled saying, where's the good part? you need to go to the next step on the keto continuum. And this is really why I push people into a support group that it sounds ridiculous. Like, I'm not going to do that. This past year, my husband's been the leader of the sauna routine in our family. And we are thankful that there's a sauna in this town in Tampa that also has a cold, I wouldn't call it a cold plunge, but it's a cold water immersion. And he was like, I'm never doing that. And I'm like, no, honey, just do it once. Get in there for 3 minutes, 1 minute, then 3 minutes. And I was bragging to him how I'd gone in 3 times. And he goes, remember when I said I would never do that? And he's done it 10 times. Same thing. When you're in a group of people that are working on things and somebody's doing something, it's like the whole premise behind what CrossFit is. I am not great at CrossFit. People think I'm really good. No, I'm just in a room of people that all try really hard. And it makes you say, okay, I can try. Same thing when you're trying to improve a habit that you don't have anybody that's ever imprinted that habit on you. So get the book. Start your own support group. If you're looking for examples about how we train people the best, twice a year we lead a really intense course, that 21-day course. I'd consider doing that. You'll go to the next level for sure, but you'll also go to the next level if you follow the continuum and say, wherever you're at, go to the next level. All right, let's move on to Amy. Writes in and she says, I've been doing OMAD for many years. Would you be in favor of me taking the OMAD to the next level and having one meal every other day? Please advise. So I talked about this a little bit last week, that every other meal per day is something I have done with patients. I talk about that in the Keto Continuum. And it's a rhythm of eating that, the biggest danger of a meal every other day is the social part of how isolated people get. I'm talking to audiences that are not 15, they're 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And when they go to eating every other day, their world becomes very isolated. So if they eat, I have them eat on Thursday, Tuesday, Sunday, and then they don't eat on they don't eat on Thursday, Tuesday, Sunday, and then they eat on both Friday, Saturday. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And we have them eat on a Friday, Saturday, that one meal, because we're just trying to overlap with the social interactions that is very typical of most people's life. Amy, the other thing I would push you towards would not be that every other day is the best answer. I don't find it as sustainable, meaning they do get really isolated. And I would push your mitochondria on the other days. Go back and watch several of my lives over the last year, and you'll hear that when I push my mitochondria, what does that mean? That means I got in a sauna every day for so many days, or I would do a resistance workout. That when you've cut the meals down to one meal a day, before I would ever have somebody do that, I'd be looking at, well, I want you tracking exactly how many carbs are in that meal, and then instead of having the one meal a day that's so late at night, make sure it's before 2:00 in the afternoon, so that the one meal a day doesn't have the worst insulin effect. Most people trying to lose weight, when they go to one meal a day, and they'll say, wow, now I need to go to every other day. No, you need to understand what insulin is doing. I have a master class that we are working on that I think it just shoots cleanup of a lot of things that I've tried to teach, but it feels like it's scattered all over. And we've been working at that script. The master class should be, we think in August, we're going to have it. It'll be for free, but it really just summarizes what's hidden inside Amy's problem, and it has to do with the years she's spent overweight. All right, so let's go to PS73. Writes in and says, so I am puzzled as to why I often feel cold, and when I have so many ketones in circulation, if my numbers are so good, why don't I feel energized? Okay, so 2 questions going on here. So let's talk about why I feel cold when I have high ketones in circulation. Usually people feel cold at the end of their fast. Like So I've routinely fasted Monday night, from Sunday. Monday night is the hardest part for me. I try not to be around human beings on Monday night because it's the time where it's just too easy for me to be crabby. But when I get in bed at night, my toes are always very cold. It's a time where my body has really wrung out that extra inflammation. I am not carrying any extra water, so that circulation is different. And as that shift in fuel is happening, your body will conserve heat, and the extremities will get cold. It's not dangerous. You're not going to get frostbite or anything, but it is a signal that just says, oh, you're shifting fuels and you're usually in transition. Like the ketones are rising and that glucose is going down a little, so now you're getting in a ketogenic state. But the next part of that question is a different question, which is, if my numbers are so good, why don't I feel energized? Because to me, that actually looks a lot closer at what else is going on there. And when people are in a ketogenic state and they don't feel good, usually that means there's just something missing. So I will look at how much salt have you had, how much salt have you not had, maybe is a better way to look at it. And the major one that's more difficult to replace is magnesium. So I will send them for 5 floats. They're an hour long. It's a magnesium switch, and you'll know within a couple of those floats if we're on the right track, because I'll just start to feel a lot better. Now, so replacing your magnesium with floats forever I think it's great. But I've had a lot of pushback from people saying, I can't do that, I can't afford that. Well, you can take magnesium, that's fine too. There's all kinds of limitations on how you actually do that, but the only magnesium that makes a difference is slow and steady. You have to continue slow and steady. So it can take a month of replacing magnesium but if they do 5 floats, they get at least ahead of the wave, and then they know they're on the right puzzle, like they feel better. And so then find a rhythm that you can stick to. Okay, let's do a couple more. Lizzie is next on our questions, and she writes in and says, Dr. Boz, if keto fat adapted people, is it possible that for some people exogenous ketones won't cause an increase in ketone in the bloodstream? If yes, why would that be? So I have seen that. I've actually seen that in people who they're eating way too often. So if you go back and Google one of my favorite slides, it has to do with the insulin produced with powdered carbohydrates compared to powdered protein compared to powdered fat. So it's all they ate. It was an actual study, and you produce so much insulin. These were healthy people, produce so much insulin because it's a particleized substance. When I look at folks with insulin resistance, they can chew gum and produce insulin, and their fat cells are very adapted to storing fat. So they can swallow exogenous ketones, and although they'll have good energy, they will, it's very fleeting, and the insulin's going to chase. Ketones you can't store. That's the beauty, the difference. But there's trade-offs, Lizzie, with when people say, what should I take, MCT or exogenous ketones? So there's trade-offs. If people are in a rut, things are not going right. Like, go back to 2014, where I'm like, I don't care. I can't do anything more than I'm doing. I'm done. Swallowing ketones would have been a good idea. The reason why is when you swallow exogenous ketones, you either pee them out or you burn them. So even when you prick your finger, if they're not there, your body's either not using them or peeing them out right away. Now, I'll tell you that they use exogenous ketones and they don't change any other behaviors, and they don't lose the weight. It's not going to magically melt the weight off of you. It's just going to help you suppress appetite. It's that part of community that really gives you the feedback saying, well, show us you're eating. log your sugars into the dashboard so we can see what your morning sugars are. But you didn't check it for 6 out of the 7 days. So how can you make data points when you don't look? I mean, those kind of checkbacks are what we're looking to put people in community for. And it's not that we don't believe you. We've been there. I've been there too, where I'm like, I don't want to check. But when I know people are on this support team with me, or we're doing a challenge together, I get a lot better at being consistent, saying no when I should. But when it comes to exogenous ketones, and they swallow them and don't have a high rise, they're usually very insulin resistant. So I pull them away from, sip on the ketones while you read the book, because the ketones will at least keep the mechanics of those cells waiting until you're ready. So if I go back to those days where it was a tough season, I wasn't going to do anything different. It took my mom trying to die for me to do anything different. If I would have been swallowing ketones while I was in my valley, first of all, my brain would have worked better. My energy would have been a little better. I might not have measured really good ketones, but when I did make the switch, it wouldn't have taken me a month to figure out how to peak ketones. I didn't have a rule book. I was trying to figure it out. So this next person, I'm laughing at her title name, Starving Myself to Life. That's a great title. Is the triglyceride HDL ratio reliable enough to gauge insulin resistance, or is there something better? There is something better, much better, and that is this is what will gauge insulin resistance. Look at your glucose and your ketones at the same time. I've done several videos on this, but when people say, but my ketones went down, I'm like, yep, that's because your insulin it's resistant. To get it to go back the other direction, it'll do good, and then it's going to adapt to the layer you're at. And to get it to do a little better, you have to stress the body. Whether that stress is sweating in a sauna, or limiting food after sunset, all of those are parts of the reasons why. So the triglyceride HDL ratio is not bad. It's just not, you can only do that once every 3 months if you can get your doctor to talk into it. But you can check your Dr. Boz ratio every day. So insulin resistance changes. So when you only get to look 4 times a year, it's really hard to gauge. You make a whole bunch of decisions off this one blood test. All right, I'm going to check my numbers here, but I have 2 more questions. Karen writes in and says, I have flabby skin on my triceps and thighs. Welcome to being a woman. Tell me, will autophagy help? I've done 36 hours fast, up to 42. How often should I focus on long fasts, especially for this problem? Well, I'll tell you that most of my patients that reverse that flabby skin problem, they are doing it in the setting of 72-hour fasts. I'm missing, here. It's like, where'd my test strips go? They are doing 72-hour fast. And there's a reason. In the keto continuum, step number 12 is 8 consistent, sequential, meaning you don't do 3 and then you go take a break and then do another 3. It's every week you do a 72-hour fast, 8 weeks in a row. You will not believe what happens to your system after that. If you want autophagy and you've been insulin resistant for a long time, now, anybody listening to this that's new to keto, you do not start there. Those hormones that I was talking about, if they're missing, if they're not in circulation, then you don't have a magnesium problem. You have an insulin problem that's holding all of your hormones in the stored fat, and you're going to feel terrible. So don't do that either. So read the book. So the autophagy that she's looking to get is possible. But when I get people who are saying, yeah, I'm doing this 36-hour fast and maybe I'll go 42, get yourself to, first of all, get to 48 and then get yourself to 72 hours. You're going to need a support group to do that. At least I did, and most of the people that I've met need this. I'm checking this a little early, meaning I didn't drink most of my ketones yet, but the glucose is 71. I think it's up from 65 or something at the beginning of the hour, and then 2.7. You can see that. So those are my numbers at the end. I'll finish this last question and then we will call it a wrap. Please be sure to sign up for our email list so that you get the little challenge that's coming out on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. And again, there's lots more where that came from. So stick around. We've got some more great news coming in the next weeks ahead. Last question. Oopsie, wrong one. Was, okay, what can I do to get rid of excess face fat was what I was going to address, and that is you need to empty the fat cells. Those fat cells are all listening to insulin. That means you need to get a Dr. Boz ratio of less than 80 for sure, first thing in the morning, and those fat cells did not fill up in a day. They will not decrease in a day. That when you check your numbers at the beginning of this process and then you fall off the wagon and say, I haven't checked in a while, well, go to a support group, because today I checked that guy's ketones when he came to support group, because I'm like, well, what are your ketones now? All right. I'm signing off. I will continue to nurse my tooth, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in that email list.